Hello Kerbal and welcome to a small simple tutorial. How to get into orbit using the gravity turn properly. So in other words, rather than just doing the normal using your keyboard turning and dumping boosters and whatnot, I'm going to be talking a bit about how to do your gravity turn properly and how to do it effectively, or sort of. How to stop your rockets spinning out of control, because that seems to be a main theme along with some of the people who have watched my videos and perhaps have copied my designs and creating those large, huge rockets. So, by here I'm launching the Kerbal X. This is a pretty useful craft if you start off not in career mode, but in sandbox mode. You get this rocket from the start, and it is useful in that it makes things easier. It's perfectly balanced, it's an absolutely awesome design, and you don't have to build it. Yes, you do not have to build it yourself. So you simply just launch your app, slowly turn right, just have the full thrust going for you, get up to altitude, and then circularize your orbit. Now obviously you do not have this in career mode, but however, as I said, this is a perfect platform to start to learn your gravity turn and, well, just learn how to do it. Don't worry about the heat and effects here, because then they're not going to kill us. We're going to get up to space before that happens, before we die, and we're getting out of the atmosphere now. See by here, once we hit over, was it 50k, or looks like over 40,000, let's say 45 kilometers, the heat and effect stops. And we've gone over 100 kilometers, so I'm going to kill that and go to map view and quickly get ourselves into orbit. Now, following the maneuver node and whatnot is easy enough, so I'm going to stop the video by here, go back to the VAB, and we'll start off with building a simple first rocket to get into orbit. So I'll see you in the VAB. Okay, so let's say you're doing your first orbit. So I'm gonna start this with you in mind that you have not done an orbit before in KSP. So get the command prompt Mark 1, get a Mark 16 parachute, and then get some fuel tanks. T400 fuel tank. And you want to go to the rocket engines and get the LV909 engine, or the Terry engine, as they're all named. Now go to structural. Oh yes, I almost forgot. Stack the TR18A stack decoupler right here. Then put the rockets back in place so we can decouple that, so this rocket won't come down hitting and exploding. Now another TR18A stack decoupler under there. Now if we go to the fuel tanks, we get the T800 fuel tanks. Place them under that as such, if I can click on them. Now you want to go to the engine section and get this swivel engine, the T45. Right, that rocket is ready for us to get into orbit. In fact, it is massively overpowered. Now you can do things like go to the wing aerodynamics and add winglets to it, but let's say you don't have winglets. Let's say you're in career mode and you've got the basic rockets, and I believe when you start different career mode you get the T100 fuel tank after you got the first two tiers of the tech tree, and also you get the Reliant engine. Now you can copy this design. Obviously you're going to have stack more of these fuel tanks on top of each other. I believe the weight of these in the same length as these is exactly the same, so don't worry about that. It's just that you have to build it with more parts. So anyway, let's go to the launch pad, launch this app, and I'll show you how to get into orbit. And now a couple of things you have to consider when you get into orbit is that you'll have atmospheric drag on the rocket, because the atmosphere is now big in the game, that since version 1, that you're going to have to watch which way your rocket's pointing. If you flip over too much, you're going to crash. Don't worry about this design. It's designed to stand straight up on his rocket engine. So anyway, we're going to press T to engage the SAS. Now, if you're in crew mode, you don't get all these extra options. Just make sure you have a pilot in the pilot seat. Press Z to go to full thrust. I'm going to bring up Kerbal Engineer, just because I want to bring up the point that you have to make sure that your thrust-weight ratio is nowhere above 2. So, let's launch. Now, obviously, we're under 2, but that's okay. We're wasting fuel at the moment. That's because the gravity is having more of an effect on us than that of the atmosphere. Anyway, as said, you have to worry about the atmosphere. So the first thing you're going to have to do once you get perhaps about 40 meters per second is move over about 5 degrees, halfway between here and the 10-degree mark on this little bubble here. Now just keep on turning over slowly. Stay close to the prograde marker. For what I find is larger rockets, you have a larger cross-section area, so you have more aerodynamic drag. Now if I press F12, you'll see the aerodynamic overlay. You get the drag on the bottom of the rocket. It's like anything. If you got a balance and a pencil on your finger, it's going to be hard to keep it upright. See, we get an aerodynamic drift from the lifting body or the aerodynamic drag model. So I'm just using the keys. I'm just using the A and D keys, unless you're using a joystick, just right and left. And I'm turning right. And the reason why we're going right as well, I have to mention, is that because the planet itself is rotating right. Or, never eat. Yeah, east. I couldn't work out which way it was. West or east. I always mix them up. Anyway, we're heading east. That's because the planet is rotating east, and you get a boost of 175 meters per second. If memory serves me correctly, it could be a bit faster, it could be a bit less. Now, as you can see, we're still going full thrust. We're going over 2. So we'll start to might get extra drag. I suggest you slow down at this point. Especially if you've got a larger rocket. You can see we get an aerodynamic effects. In fact, it's turning red because we've got heating, shock heating, I believe it's called, or friction. I'm not sure the correct term. But do not worry. Just keep your speed down to a nice level, or thrust-to-weight ratio. By the way, this is Kerbal Engineer Redux mod. It's an awesome mod. If only one mod you're going to have in the game, select that. Okay, we've run out of fuel. So let's stage. Engage a second engine. Boost ourselves above the atmosphere, which is 70 kilometers. Now I'm going to go to map view. If you're in crew mode, you do not get the option of creating maneuver nodes or fiddling with this. So what you're going to have to do is fast forward to the apoapsis and then get into orbit. Basically, you want to get your apoapsis, thrust forward, which is what this maneuver node marker is showing. Wait till the maneuver things are the apoapsis and the periapsis swap position, or almost swap position, the best idea. And hey presto, you should be in orbit. In fact, that music now tells us we're in space. Now, I haven't got a battery on this, so turning this might use a bit of juice. And we got no way to recharge it because the LV909 engine does not recharge. Anyway, let's say we don't have a maneuver node. It's going to take us a bit of time to get up to speed, so if we warp just before the maneuver node, before the periapsis. Now point not at the prograde marker, but at the horizon, and just thrust up. Now this is an LV909 engine. It doesn't have as much thrust as the other engines. That's okay because at the moment, and we're heading down, we just want to get into an orbit. So we may not be a perfectly circular orbit. Do not worry about perfectly circular orbits, because in fact you can affect your orbit later on, which is you go to periapsis and apoapsis and adjust the height of your orbits. Okay, so I'm not doing much change here because we're heading down. I'm gonna thrust up slightly on the nav ball here, just to get that boost slightly going up. So we're pushing up apoapsis up as well as raising our periapsis. Now space begins at 70 kilometers in KSP, so hey, there you go. We're 119 kilometers by 71. Now if we look at the map view, zoom out, that looks pretty circular. See, it doesn't take much. Not even us to get a perfect one on the launch. They adjust their orbit by adjusting their height to the orbit while they're in orbit, not while they're boosting up into orbit. Okay, so that's how to get into orbit. Obviously, to get out of orbit, you maneuver your rocket retrograde after you've done all your Kerbal science and whatnot. Boost that way, and then reduce your orbit until, let's see, what have you got, your 2 kilometers up? That should be fine. Don't get any slower, otherwise you're going to enter the atmosphere too quickly. I suggest, I don't know, perhaps a bit higher than 200 kilometers. If you're not sure, get about 30 kilometers on your periapsis, because otherwise you may find you go too deep into the atmosphere and explode from the heating. Okay. Now, let's fast forward time, get back into the atmosphere, say bye-bye to the space music, and make sure your capsule's pointing retrograde when you get into the atmosphere. Then switch T off, because the aerodynamic drag should autocorrect the way that a capsule is pointing up. So quickly, let's get down. I want to show you the big rockets. In fact, I'll leave this to you, because otherwise this video will go too long. Because I want to get into a bit more advanced launching techniques, not building techniques. Obviously, this is just a trial run for you newbies who want to get into orbit. So we'll go back to the VAB and the larger rockets. Don't worry, Jebediah will survive. I'll meet you back in the VAB. Okay, so now we've got the basics on how to get into orbit. There are a bit more things to it, like thrust to weight ratio and delta V, but this simple design should be easy enough for someone to follow. Get into orbit, as long as you point to prograde, that means you'll stay upright and you'll get into orbit easily. But however, there are some problems when you go into building something large. Now, I've copied these saves from my Mining the Man series, and the reason why I've done that, let's see which one's not so large. Help me out with Kerbal, get me out here. Yeah, the ring station I think is the second one. Now, as I've shown you, the Kerbal X gets into orbit, but however, you have things like this, where you've got a taller rocket, you've got a taller payload to get into orbit, and the rocket isn't as big. Now, this design has no winglets. It's just a pure rocket. We have LVT-35 engines, with 30 engines, which don't swivel, so they don't add control. All the thing that is controlling is the mainsail engine and any capsule torque, which is probably from this advanced inline stabilizer and this remote guidance unit. Now, if you wonder what this is from my ring station in Mining the Man series. These just attach to the core module so that I can attach ring sections around it to make a ring around station. Okay, but other than that, let's go and put this on the launch pad, and I can show you the problems I've had, and then talk about the techniques. And the game just crashed. Oh, balls. I will be back in a minute. Okay, so here we are on the launch pad with the links for our ring station, I suppose you could call it. So let's engage the SAS, Z to go full thrust, and press spacebar. Now let's thrust down because I want to keep that about thrust to weight ratio about 2, and let's turn over to 5 degrees to start our gravity turn. Now if I follow the same profile as I did with the other rocket, because this is a taller load, it's going to wobble a bit more than the last one. I put some structural reinforcement ring struts. Ooh, engine's gone. Okay. Just try to keep that thrust weight ratio as 2. As you see, you're juggling everything. You're juggling your staging, you're juggling your turning, you're juggling your thrust weight ratio. It takes a lot to control. And whoops, I've turned too much there. See, I'm using manual controls. And you can see the wobbling. That is what's happened. If I press F3, perhaps... No. Separation confirmed. So no problems. The structural struts, I suppose you could call them. The struts, the space tape in there has not been destroyed. So let's just stage that so we can have a quick look here. Oh, I meant to stage the... Okay, never mind. Let's go back to launch. Flight to launch, and let's show you how to do this properly. And by the way, I've only recently learned how to do this properly, so any new people who think that I'm a genius, no, I'm not. I learn the game by playing and messing around and failing a lot. Yes, even on my Manual Man videos, no, I don't cut out a lot of it. I just cut out the bits that are not the failures. I try to put all the failures in it where I can. But the videos would be too long if I'd included everything. Okay, let's do it again. Engage the SS, go full thrust. And let's say we're going to launch again into the west. So, engage. Now quickly turn over to 5 degrees, try to stay close to 90. Now hit the prograde marker. You control your thrust. Make sure your thrust weight ratio does not go above 2. Where I normally do is I wait for the thrust weight ratio to go to 210, thrust down to 2, and don't control the rocket. Just do the staging as normal. Now not controlling the rocket. Obviously, once you stage some rockets, the thrust weight ratio is going to adjust. So adjust with it. But as you can see, we're turning. Oh, and I forgot to stage there. Let's boost up a bit. Now what's happening here is gravity is pulling the rocket to the right, to the west. So this is what a gravity turn means, ladies and gentlemen, is that the gravity is pulling you to turn. Now, you may find you're not turning as fast as you'd like, so what you can do is reduce your thrust to weight ratio a bit more than 2, so you have a bit more of an arc. Because if you're going fast, you've got aerodynamic drag, which is pulling you, which is keeping your rocket going straight with regards to the prograde vector. Okay, so you see, we're not flipping out, and this is the problem I had with this rocket. I went in. Normally, I go in, design a rocket, test the launch. Oh, I thought we're flipping out there. No, it's just going to orbit mode. In fact, now we can go to full thrust until we're, let's say, 100 kilometers. There you go. Let's use MechJeb. That's why I got this up, and not to cheat. It's just to automate the getting into orbit part. Just give us a bit of a fast forward. And come on, we're in space. So yeah, we're gonna jettison that as soon as the rocket fires up. 'Cause I always love that. It's not the wisest thing to do because these things can get jammed in your rocket, causing some hilarious disasters. The fairings I'm on about, by the way. Okay, come on, MechJeb, engage. Yes, awesome stuff. Awesome separation and awesome getting to orbit. Now, as obviously, MechJeb is definitely going to get us into a perfect circular orbit. Better than we could, I suppose. And that's why NASA uses computers to get their rockets up into orbit. Even Russia do so. Yeah. There's no shame in that. So, yeah, we use the computer to, the SAS to do our gravity turn. All that was doing though was making sure the rocket was pointing directly at the prograde vector so that aerodynamic drags don't hit the side of the rocket, flipping it over, and we don't get so much wobble because when you're controlling it with the WASD keys, it's more of a janky movement. So that, can I do it by here? Let's engage the RCS. And engage that bit. So if I go to side, can we see this wobbling? Now, may not be wobbling that much. And it's probably because I got that control. Anyway, when you're taking off, these wobble about a bit because it's a smaller decoupler here compared to this rocket, and some of these links are never that good. Especially this thing, the shroud. That always causes me a lot of problems. That's why I had to put this extra part on top and clink everything to that. Anyway, I'm going off course by here. This is about getting into orbit the best way. Let's try a larger rocket, which I even have much more problems with. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let's have a look at... was it this cool? Yes, I had problems with that one, but not so much as the next one I'm going to show you. Yeah, this is a tall rocket, and a smaller load on top. Obviously that is going to wobble like hell. And this was my original first design for the proper design for large payloads, but this thing is huge. Well, probably in my book. I don't like building a huge massive rockets in this game. Okay, the rockets, yeah, I've got larger rockets out here, but look at this payload. Yes, this aero shell is going to cause a lot more aerodynamic drag. In fact, let's try manually launching it. Okay. So yeah, I have a lot of problems with wobbling. Also, I think the biggest problem I have with launching up into orbit is trying to match an orbit with an inclination of another target. Unfortunately, I'm not going to show you how to do it in this episode or this tutorial because I can't do it myself yet. I have troubles. I can correct it while I'm in orbit, which is what I do, but that's beside the point. Okay, it takes a bit longer to load this in. I can see I'm at 6 frames per second, so Z full thrust. Engage. Control, we're under 2 thrust weight ratio. Let's turn over to 5 degrees. At low speeds we're okay because we're not having so much aerodynamic forces. Let's enable aerodynamic force visualization overlays. Okay, I'm trying to turn over slowly and trying to stay at 90-degree angle, so we're going directly west. We're starting to high stresses. Let's reduce the thrust weight ratio down to 2. You watch now. I have loads of problems with this, and at this launch I will be perfect in getting this into orbit. But no, we're having some wobble. Okay, and also, by the way, when I'm launching these, I'm not looking at the rocket while I'm launching. I'm looking straight at the nav ball, looking at the little dot. That little dot is everything to me. Well, and I'm trying to control it, but we're getting aerodynamic stresses, which is... Whoa, what are you doing up there? See? That is the lifting body dynamics of the game. Whoa, and it's not letting me. And those lifting body is acts on real rockets as well as this one. So yeah, that is weird. What is that doing up there? And obviously you got drag, which causes drag. So let's revert this to launch and try again. This time using the technique I showed you about using the prograde. Now hopefully if you're in career mode, you'd have unlocked all these what do you call it? The gimmicking computers? Well, we're inside the payload then. So you get, let's engage the SS once the physics is loaded in. Okay, so we've done that. Once you get engaged the SS, hopefully you have all these by the time you come around to making large rockets like this. Let's get the thrust to full Z. Now obviously you can't hit prograde while you're on the launch pad because you're not moving. So engage the rocket engines. Wait till you get about, say, 30, then start to turn over. By the time you get to 95 degrees. Try to stay as close as you can to 90. Then hit the prograde marker, because it's hard to adjust the 90. You can adjust it slightly up and down, the W and S key by here, but we're at 93 degrees. We can do corrections in orbit now easily. And then just control this. Now I noticed when I was trialing it with this rocket that we weren't turning over as much. That's because we've got higher thrust down here, I think. Or perhaps it's the aerodynamics on the outside of this rocket that's keeping it going straighter longer. I'm not entirely sure, but you can always slow down slightly more, but not completely, because the controls for this rocket are dependent on the gimbling of these engines down here, the three center ones. So we're going up, slowing our drag and whatnot. Okay, we got that there. Let's give it a little hand. I'm going to press the D key to turn it over slightly, just to make sure we're not going to overthink this. Okay, so we're keeping it under 2 thrust to weight ratio, under 2. And I'm concentrating because we're coming to the staging here. And I'm worried about that. Is there a thing in the game? Is there a mod I've installed perhaps that's causing that? Ooh. Thrust to weight ratio to 2, please. Ooh. Or just under 2. So yeah, it's not 100% perfect method. It's not the most efficient, I suppose, getting to orbit. Perhaps you can start more aggressive at gravity turn at the beginning with this. But it works, and the rocket has not been flipped out at all. So that's awesome. Now, if I'd known that with this and some of the other designs I had before, I would not have so many problems. And I wouldn't have to use winglets and control units and RCS and whatnot. Veneer engine, veneer thrusters, which give you like an RCS control using liquid fuel and oxidizer. Let's kill them. I will change to orbit. This has trouble turning, in fact. I'll stay on the prograde. I have no idea why. But we're making it. And in fact, let's make this a bit shorter. Let's quickly execute that. We don't need this large engine, as I found out, so let's stage that. Engage that engine. The reveal of the payload, which was meant to be a mining vessel, which was supposed to land on the man. However, I'm not sure if it didn't have enough thrust to weight ratio. It was terrible. And I don't think we have RCS on here, so let's abort node execution. Thrust a bit, so we can turn over. Engage the SS, I suppose, and point towards that maneuver node. Okay, create and execute a circularization burn. I'm going to speed the video up a bit by here. Oh, sorry, KSP, not the video. But anyway guys, so that is what I wanted to show you, the technique of using the prograde. Make sure you're on the yellow marker when you're launching up into orbit. Obviously this launch profile of this one was quite inefficient in the fact that we weren't turning over so much. So, excuse me, hiccup. So that we don't have so much of a smooth arc by here, and it's going to take a lot more delta V to get us into orbit. But if you build the rockets well enough, I suppose, if you plan it a bit better than I can, that's good on you. But this works. This totally works. So let's get this guy. If I can get the view correct. I'm trying to swivel him over. So we have Kerbal beneath us, getting into orbit at a fast, impressive speed. So, sorry. We're not talking properly. Anyway, whatever, I'm just being a bit fun by here. Because the quick tutorial how to get into orbit quickly. Well, not quickly, but efficiently without having to use MechJeb. Which is always awesome. I used to use MechJeb quite a lot when I first started this game. Because I was terrible. And that was before you had the problems with the aerodynamic track. So, as we finish getting into our orbit, all I can say is you're ills. Trust me, I'm Orbiter, trust me, I'm an engineer. And there'll be an over here and an over here.